Okay, let's jump right in. For this deep dive, we're opening up First Chronicles chapter 24.
Yes. A really interesting one.
It is. We're going back, way back, to look at something surprisingly, well, systematic. How they organized the sacred service in the temple.
Yeah, the level of detail is pretty striking. It's a blueprint, almost.
Exactly. Meticulous planning, these impartial selection methods. It tells you a lot about their priorities.
Uh-huh. And it really centers on King David, but not just him. He's working with Zadok and Ahimelech.
Right. The key figures representing the priestly lines, tracing back to Aaron.
Absolutely. And that structure, that organization, it just jumps off the page.
It really does. It wasn't just thrown together.
No, definitely not. We see David there, but like you said, crucially, alongside Zadok, he's from Eleazar's line, and Ahimelech from Ithamar's line.
So the recognized heads of the priestly families, their involvement really underlines how official and important this whole process was.
Exactly. Gives it that weight.
So, quick refresher. Aaron's sons were Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. But the text points out Nadab and Abihu died early, tragically, with no sons.
Right. Which meant the priesthood, the ones specifically for altar service, had to continue through just Eleazar and Ithamar.
So those two lines carried everything forward.
Precisely. And, as time goes on, these families grow, lots more descendants.
Makes sense.
So the challenge becomes, okay, how do we manage all these priests? How do we organize them for temple service in a way that's fair and orderly?
That's the core question.
And the chapter says David, Zadok, and Ahimelech took this on. They started separating the descendants into divisions for their appointed times of ministering.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The numbers, they weren't even.
Ah, right. I remember reading that. It specifically says there were more leaders, more heads of families found among Eleazar's descendants.
Yeah, 16 heads from Eleazar's side.
16 compared to Ithamar.
Only 8 from Ithamar.
Wow, double. So you've got this inherent imbalance right from the start.
Exactly. So the question is, how do you set up a system for something sacred, something so important that feels fair and legitimate when one group is literally twice the size?
Yeah, how do you possibly manage that? Seems like a recipe for problems.
Well, and this tells us a lot about their values, their approach to, well, administration, even thousands of years ago. They didn't just say, okay, bigger group gets more power or preference. No, the text emphasizes they divided them impartially. And how? By casting lots.
Casting lots. Simple but effective, I guess.
Totally. The goal wasn't to favor the larger group or penalize the smaller one. It was about making sure the assignment of duties was, beyond human fiddling or preference.
Takes the bias right out.
Right. The lots decided the sequence for service, mixing divisions from both Eleazar's and Ithamar's lines together based on that draw.
So it shows a real commitment to fairness, perceived fairness anyway, in how these sacred jobs were handed out.
A deep-seated commitment, I'd say.
And casting lots. It sounds maybe a bit random to us, but it was clearly a very formal process for them, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
it wasn't just drawing straws behind closed doors.
No.
The text mentions Shemaiah, a Levite scribe. His job was to write down the names as the lots came up.
So official record keeping.
Yes, and get this. It was done publicly, in the presence of the king, the top officials, Zadok, Ahimelech, and the heads of all the families involved, priests and Levites.
Wow, everyone was there watching.
Total transparency. And the process itself, it's described as taking one family head from Eleazar's line, then one from Ithamar's, based on how the lots fell, to establish the order for the 24 service divisions.
24 divisions in total.
That's what they ended up with. And that recording part is crucial. It wasn't just a draw. It was documented, witnessed, legitimized. The result was this list of 24 divisions, and the chapter actually lists the heads for each one in the order the lots determined.
It's amazing they list them all out. The first, the second, right through to the 24th. Jediah, Immer, Harim, the whole list.
It speaks volumes about how much they valued order and having that official record.
Definitely. And the text gives the reason, the why behind all this effort. It says this whole organization was their appointed order of ministering, according to the regulations prescribed for them by their forefather Aaron, as the Lord, the God of Israel, had commanded him.
Yeah, that link back is key.
So it wasn't just David deciding this on his own. It's presented as continuing something already established, something divinely mandated even.
Exactly. That connection to Aaron and God's command elevates this whole administrative task. It's not just, human bureaucracy. It's seen as putting God's plan for worship into practice.
So priests organized. 34 divisions, impartial lots, meticulously recorded, all tied back to Aaron. Got it.
That's the core for the priests.
But okay, that covers the priests, the sons of Aaron serving right at the altar. But what about the Levites? They had tons of important jobs too, right? Sure. Musicians, gatekeepers, treasurers, helping the priests.
Crucial roles.
How did the system apply to them? Were they organized too?
Yes, the chapter moves right into that. It talks about the rest of the descendants of Levi.
Okay.
And just like with the priests, it maps out the lineage, the family structures within those broader Levite families. You get names from Amram's line, Izhar's, Hebron's, Uziel's, Merari's.
Wow, again with the detailed lists. Sons, grandsons.
It really shows how deep their genealogical knowledge and record-keeping went, even noting where, say, a family line didn't have sons.
That focus on lineage is just incredible. It was clearly central to who they were and what they did. But how did these Levites get assigned their specific roles or maybe turns of service? Did they use the same method?
They absolutely did. The text is explicit. They also cast lots, just as their brothers, the descendants of Aaron, did.
So the same system, lots again.
Exactly. And again, not done in a corner. It happened in that same formal setting. King David, Zadok, Ahimelech, the heads of the priestly families, and the heads of the Levi families, all present.
So a unified approach for everyone involved in the temple service. Priests and Levites treated the same way in terms of assignment.
Yes, showing that principle of fairness and transparency wasn't just for the priests at the altar, but for the whole support structure too.
That's powerful. And there's one more detail about the Levite lot casting that really struck me as showing how serious they were about fairness.
What was that?
It says, the families of the oldest brother were treated the same as those of the youngest.
Ah, yes. That's a really important nuance, isn't it?
It seems like it. Why specifically mention that?
Well, think about it. In many ancient societies, maybe even their own usually, birth order mattered a lot. The oldest brother often had special status, privileges, maybe more authority.
Right, primogeniture and all that.
Exactly. So by stating, right here in the context of casting lots for sacred duties, that the families of the oldest and youngest brothers were treated equally.
Okay.
It shows they were deliberately setting aside those normal internal family hierarchies for this specific process. The lot determined the assignment, not your status within the extended family based on birth order.
So the impartiality wasn't just skin deep. It went right down into the family structure itself when it came to assigning these roles.
Precisely. It reinforces just how fundamental that principle of the impartial lot was for them in this context.
Okay, so stepping back and summing it all up. What 1 Chronicles 24 really gives us is this remarkable snapshot of ancient administration, but all focused on sacred service.
That's a great way to put it. You see this really systematic process unfold.
Yeah.
First, carefully identifying and dividing the priests, Aaron's descendants, into those 24 courses or divisions.
Right.
Then, using that impartial lot system, witnessed by everyone important, to set the service order, even dealing with that tricky issue of the unequal numbers between Eleazar's and Ithamar's lines.
And all meticulously written down by the scribe.
Then, you see that exact same principle, impartial casting of lots, applied to all the other Levite families for their various jobs.
With that extra layer of ensuring fairness within the families, regardless of oldest or youngest status.
Exactly. So the whole picture is one of incredible attention to detail, a deep commitment to order, and this profound emphasis on impartiality fairness as the foundation for distributing sacred duties.
And they understood it all as being in line with, long-standing rules and even divine instructions from Aaron's time.
Right. It connects the present actions firmly to past authority.
It must have been a massive job, though, just coordinating all that, identifying all those family heads, managing the logistics of the lot, casting for priests and Levites, documenting everything accurately.
Oh, absolutely. An immense administrative undertaking for that time.
It really highlights how incredibly important, how sacred they must have viewed this service to warrant such intricate planning and such a commitment to a fair process.
It truly does. And maybe that leaves us with something to think about. Considering this sheer depth of detail and the systematic approach we find here, the precise lists, the impartial lots for everyone, the formal recording, even sidestepping internal family seniority, what does all that suggest about just how central, how profoundly important and sacred the service being organized actually was to them?
That's a deep question.
And maybe looking at it another way, what might modern organizations, businesses, committees, any group, grappling with fairness, transparency, distributing roles among different kinds of members. What might they learn from this ancient commitment to a fair process and detailed structure, especially when dealing with situations that aren't perfectly balanced?